I was on the bus the other day heading home from seeing a friend, and this older woman gets on the bus, sits next to me, and for a couple minutes we're both minding our own business, looking out the window or whatever, and then she reaches into her purse, pulls out a pack of gum, looks me right in the eye and says, "You want a Hubba Bubba?" And she literally says it in that voice, and for a second I'm just really confused, and then it registers what she meant. She's giving me gum, and I was like, no thanks, I don't really want gum. But that sparked this whole conversation between these two strangers about how much we love bubblegum. And she told me this story about how she once blew a bubble of Hubba Bubba as she was chewing in that moment, so big while she was driving that it popped and covered her eyes, and she had to struggle her way over to pull over on the side of the road just so she could scrape the gum from her face. We love to be spiritual seekers. We have these awakening experiences, these glimpses of truth, and we read all of these spiritual books and go to all these retreats and watch all of these Eckhart Tolle, Rupert Spira, non-duality YouTube videos, and we get so in our head about spiritual practice. It's like we recognize that there's a set of inner conditions that require a certain approach to those conditions to transmute. But then we get so in our head about how we're not spiritual enough, how we're not disciplined enough in our practice, how we're not trying hard enough to be happy, that we make ourselves unhappy simply through the belief that there's someone we have to impress with our spiritual practice, yeah? There's some enlightened state that we have to magically achieve in this lifetime, or else our spiritual practice will all be for naught. But as we get in our heads about spirituality, as we continue to beat ourselves up, and as we continue to be so fixated on all of these little dramas that our finite mind loves to conjure up to keep us trapped in constriction, we get on the bus. A woman sits next to us. She offers us a piece of gum. And the conversation is so random and spontaneous that it completely pulls you out of your head. And for a moment, you really have to be there, you know? Because the juxtaposition is so extreme. You went from worrying about your relationship with God and your ability to be perfect in your spiritual practice to talking about fucking gum with someone. And you felt more open when talking about gum with a stranger on the bus than when thinking about God. And isn't that funny? How some of our most profound experiences of connection with others, our most authentic spiritual glimpses, come when we're least expecting them. They feel totally random, absurd even. Something that on the face of it has nothing to do with spirituality becomes a profound opportunity for inner growth, for inner realizations, because everything is spiritual. And everything being spiritual is not merely a metaphysical analysis or a philosophy or a convenient spiritualism that makes neo-advaita contemporary Western seekers feel better, but it is truth. When you are having a bowel movement in the morning, even though it may seem absurd, if you can approach that flow of sensations and perceptions and impressions with the same open-heartedness and willingness to see yourself clearly as you do when you meditate on the cushion, you will experience the exact same feelings of unity and love and light and oneness that you have experienced in your most intimate, authentic spiritual glimpses. When you are having a conversation with a woman who offers you gum on the bus, that stick of Hubba Bubba is literally sacrament, no different than the little wafer that you eat in church on Sunday Mass. All of it, a bowel movement, going to work, making love, praying, saying Hare Krishna over and over again, all of these things are simply God knocking at your door over and over again, seeing if you're there, seeing if you're there, seeing if you're willing to open the door. And the human never reaches the divine by trying to force itself to be perfect. The human is by definition imperfect and always will be, because the human is dependent on the concept of separation to exist, and as such is dependent on the concept of imperfection to exist. The human does not get to the divine by forcing itself to be spiritually better, but rather the human merges with the divine by getting out of its own way. The human merges with the divine by recognizing that all of the peace, all of the happiness, all of the mystical, spiritual high states that it oh so desperately craves are right at its feet, begging for it to simply look down at it. Everything is beautiful, my friends. And those conversations with strangers that we seem to have, they fill our hearts with so much glee and so much love. And you know why they do? Because those conversations with strangers are real expressions of innocence. That woman offering me gum was honestly more impactful of a spiritual teaching than a lot of the books I've read. A lot of the videos I've watched, a lot of the conversations with really high up there spiritual people I've had, because it was so agendaless. There was nothing that either of us wanted to get out of the conversation. We weren't measuring the conversation on some arbitrary scale of enlightenment or scale of consciousness. We were just really there with each other, and we're talking about fucking gum, you know? And on this channel, I just want to give a message of self-forgiveness, you know? The one thing I want is for you to recognize that you haven't done something wrong. You haven't created an impassable schism between yourself and God. You're not uniquely incapable of spiritual development. You're not too ill-disciplined to be worthy of enlightenment or peace or happiness or moksha or nirvana, whatever the fuck you want to call it. It doesn't matter. Oh my God. See, the fucking gum woman, she gets me going. But really, just the only thing you need to do, the only thing you need to understand right now is that every experience in your life, no matter how grand or small, deserves the same love and the same willingness to experience it fully. And as I've talked about in recent videos, the way that you break out of shadow cycles, the way that you lay the inner foundation in your body for your higher bodies to come into this body's awareness, or really to come into your awareness, if I want to be more accurate with my language, is simply through acceptance, is simply through not just loving yourself in the conventional sense, but loving yourself totally without conditions, which not only requires immense love, but immense honesty, which reflects as an immense sensitivity to all the ways that you still approach life as if it, and as such you, are not worth loving. You are the creator, engaging in sacred communion with each and every fiber of your life. And when you go to the grocery store today, if you do that, and you look at the cashier, make eye contact with them and say something genuinely nice to them. Give them a real compliment. Offer them a piece of gum, I don't know. And see that you have touched God once again.